Hi, James.
Good evening, guys. How you doing today?
Oh,
Good,
he's
how are
definitely
you?
over
How are
25.
you?
Yo,
Happy
what a
New
fucking
Year's. Doing all right.
formal message. Like, relax, bro.
All
Like,
right.
this isn't
So
a job interview, bro.
yes, on the topic, I would argue that body count does matter. Do I have any dissenters?
Yeah.
Dissenters?
Someone who takes a negative position.
I mean, I know what the word means. It's just who uses that word.
I did.
He does.
Yeah, he's on a fucking job interview right now.
I
Like,
noticed.
He's trying to have a formal debate. You two need to shut up.
he's not trying to have a formal debate. He's trying to act smart by knowing words, and it's sad.
Would you like to debate the position?
I'll
Engage you.
debate. The,
Okay.
I'll debate the position.
All right.
All right. Why do you think that body count does matter?
Because if you take the dating space like a market, it matters to men.
That doesn't explain how.
I think
How?
that pretty accurately explains how.
Yeah, like taking it to market, like how.
All right. So, for example, a person who's trying to sell something, they may have a price that they have in mind, but the actual price is the negotiation that you do between the seller and the buyer. So you might think something costs a certain price, but it's also up for the buyer to decide that too. So that market price is where you meet in the middle. So I would use that analogy to explain body count because I understand women, they know they have value, but sometimes they lose their value because they refuse to negotiate in the market.
Okay, so do you think that like holding that value like towards men as well, like would it make sense?
Yeah, I think that is totally reasonable. But the problem with that is most women generally don't care. I've also heard on many a discussion, women don't prefer men who are virgins because they don't want to quote unquote teach a man. So it actually goes inversely for women sometimes. Not always, but
Okay. So I guess what would be your cutoff then? Like, what would be like the highest?
well, the problem with that question is I can't necessarily tell you that. I can only tell you my personal experience and the men around me. I guess if I could
Well,
say,
yeah. So I am asking about like your anecdotal. Like, if you were dating a woman, she said she had 15 bodies. Is that a deal breaker?
yeah, for me personally, yes. I
So
think
you'd want a woman with less, like about you'd want a woman that had like 5 bodies
no,
or
probably
less.
less than that, like less than three. Depending on their
And
age as well, I could be more reasonable as well. Like
how
if
many
they're like, yeah, go ahead.
how many bodies do you have, my guy?
Mm, four.
So you want the woman to have less than three, but you have four.
Just because the psychological experiences when it comes to sex, I would argue is different for men and women.
You have to say smecks, sir.
Sorry,
TikTok
sorry.
language.
SMX.
I mean, over for both genders, intercourse does cause a psychological thing. It's more so with like fuck, what is the drug in your brain that drops for serotonin? It's mostly for serotonin than anything else. I
Okay.
mean, with some
Oxytocin.
people you can see. Uh, uh, no, because even with oxytocin, that's been studied for women that are pregnant and give birth more so than orgasms. Orgasms is more for men. Oxytocin gets dropped when a woman gives birth and sees her baby and takes care of her baby. So we can't use oxytocin as an argument because it affects both genders differently for two separate things.
Well, that would
I
go
would,
towards my point then.
yeah, Derek brought up oxytocin. I was more so going based off of serotonin. Um,
Well, we don't
but
have to
if
go
you
chemically. I can make a different argument if you'd like.
okay, go ahead.
So, would you agree that women and men value this specific interaction differently?
I think that's purely
It's
anecdotal
not
when it comes.
anecdotal. I'm asking you for a general observation. Do you think
Um,
do you think men and women hold
Shut up.
this
Shut up.
physical intimacy interaction in a different
Wait.
way from each other?
sure.
Okay, so if we can agree on that, I'll see if you agree with this. a lot of men are willing to engage in it and almost throw it away, whereas women tend to protect this interaction. They are very particular about who they'll do it with.
No, I don't fully agree with that. I think hookup culture is very, very prevalent on both sides of the gender.
But if what you're saying is true, then you would see a lot of approved swipes to the right for women. But the dating market doesn't show that. For example, if you look at any of the mobile dating app data, the women swipe about a fraction of the percentage that the men do. It's because they're a lot more selective with who they choose to mate with.
I mean, I guess you can say it's because they're more shallow and they mainly go for looks.
Regardless
If
of the
you
intention, the observation is still there.
well,
So
the intention has everything behind it, though. We can't just take away the intent when it comes to this argument. Their intent is to hook up, but if you're not attractive to them, then they're not going to swipe right on you, right? Whereas if they do find you attractive, or they're going to swipe, yeah, they're not going to swipe right on you. Whereas if they do find you attractive, they're going to swipe right.
so okay, then let me ask you another question. Do you think women are indiscriminate with who they choose to lay down with?
No, I think they are most definitely discriminatory when they choose who they're going to be sleeping with.
Okay, but it's because they value it differently. So, for example,
Um,
okay, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead.
So, a man would pay for it. Women don't pay for it.
Have you seen women at strip clubs?
On average, men are the ones who vastly outnumber the Johns that are engaging in this type of ring we're talking about. If you catch my drift,
I mean, yeah, you can say that men have a higher libido.
they value it more than women because they're willing to spend their hard-earned money. Women do not do that.
I wouldn't call that value. I'd call that desperation.
Whether they're desperate or they value it for a
But
different
taking a girl on a
reason.
date and spending money isn't desperation, by the way. So
It's
you
just
know
that there's a higher demand for there's a higher demand for it. That means they value it more.
Hey, I'm just single.
I'm not saying women don't value it at all. I'm just saying men value it a lot more.
Okay, are you trying to say that men value sex a lot, intercourse? Fuck, men value intercourse a lot more, or men value relationships a lot
Men
more?
value the smecks more than women do.
How so? Because they
Well, I've
they
given you a literal example of. Can I say the
yeah,
PROST word or no?
because
No,
what?
They
no.
they value that. They value paying for it. You mean to tell me that's not proof of valuing it more?
Okay, so I guess when you say pay for it, do you mean on a date or do you
I
mean
mean,
smack?
I mean, I mean dating. I mean OnlyFans. I mean any type of sex work. It's literally the most oldest, one of the most oldest professions on the planet, and it goes one
Yeah.
way: men buying women, not the other way.
So again, taking dates out of it, because I don't find dates desperation. But when it comes to paying for SW work or any type of corn, anything like that, that's more for desperation than anything. When it comes to a
But
date,
desperation proves my point. I'm talking about demand. Desperation is demand.
desperation just shows that they can't get any bitches.
Okay, well, I mean, shaming men, you can do that, but it's still the argument still holds. A
I wouldn't
desperate
really
man has a higher
say
demand. So, for example, if you're desperate for something, are you willing to pay a higher price for it?
no.
Really?
Yes.
That sounds completely irreasonable. Okay, so you mean to tell me if you're on your last, you're on your last,
Okay, you're being disingenuous though, Liz. Yes, you are, bro. Stop.
How am I being disingenuous?
Because if you're desperate for something, you're going to pay more for it. Stop lying, bro.
I'm not lying. I've been desperate for a lot of things, and I still haven't paid
well, I
it.
can prove to you that
So you're telling me if
it's
you're
laughable.
starving, if you're desperate for food, you're starving, you're not gonna pay $15 for a sandwich?
No, that's too
So you're
expensive.
So
just
you're just
gonna.
gonna starve.
All right. Well, I mean,
Exactly.
I think
You're just being disingenuous.
I think
How
she's
are
just
you gonna tell
afraid to.
me if I'm being disingenuous?
Because that's bullshit. Everybody
It's
was
not.
willing to
Wait, but Rage,
do
I've
more.
literally been homeless and had no money and still didn't pay the money
Yeah,
that I
but
should have
desperation
when it
just
comes
proves
to
that you
food.
do more for something, like for said thing. That's just how it works.
It doesn't
If
mean
you're
that
not
you
willing to
hold
do more for
value,
it, then you're not
though.
desperate.
It doesn't mean that you hold value. It holds higher value though.
Well, to me, it seems like it's a high burden of to prove. Like, could you substantiate that? How could you explain to me how a person who is desperate for a hamburger wouldn't pay more money than they usually would? Can you explain to me how that would be the case on the opposite?
I mean, I just held that for my stance
But
to
that's an
make.
anecdotal. That's an anecdotal
How
thing.
about
Yeah,
in
exactly.
general though?
I was speaking anecdotally. I
No,
can't speak
but you
for
just told me I
generality.
can't do it, and we can step outside of that realm. We don't need to use anecdotes.
When did I tell you that you can't use anecdotes?
Wait, hold
So
up, Liz.
usually
Wait, hold
you
on,
don't
hold
win
on.
arguments
James,
by
James, stop
anecdote.
real quick. Stop real quick.
Yeah,
Liz, be honest though. Be honest, right? If
I'm
somebody's
being
desperate for
1000% honest.
no, if somebody's desperate for something, doesn't have to be food. It has to be. It can be anything, right? Somebody's desperate for something. Are they not willing to do more to get that thing?
I think that depends on the person. For me personally, I wouldn't do anything more for that
But you
one.
don't think as I'm talking about as a majority, you
yeah.
don't
Why
think
not take
people that
yourself
are
out of the
desperate.
equation?
That's why that's
Why not?
okay. I can only speak to one person at a
Yeah,
time.
James, shut the fuck up real quick. Liz, you don't think in a general aspect people are willing to do more when they're desperate?
That's why I said I think it depends on the person.
Yeah, but everything depends on the person. I'm talking about in a general aspect. What do you think?
In
Not
a general aspect, sure.
okay. There we go.
All
So
right.
James, make your fucking point.
So if a person's more, generally speaking, if a person is more likely to pay higher a price for something that they're desperate for, that means the demand of that thing goes up. This goes back to, once again, simple supply side economics. The higher the demand, the higher the price. So
Yeah, but
given
it
that,
doesn't mean
okay, go ahead.
value.
Go ahead.
I just said that it doesn't mean that it holds a higher value.
The higher the price means a higher value. Are you disagreeing with that?
Yes.
So you disagree that the higher something a price is, the higher price something is, the higher its value?
Yes.
Okay, well, is it because of money attached to it, or is it something else?
Well, she's right there though.
Well, she
Just
disagrees
because
with.
something
Okay,
think
so
about a Louis Vuitton shirt, right? It's a T-shirt, bro. It's not like higher value just because it's Louis Vuitton. Like,
Well, you might think that, you personally, but there's a lot of people who would disagree. Just because you're not willing to pay that price doesn't mean millions of other people won't.
yeah, so value would be coined as subjective then. Like for me, if I were to you and I were to go to the store, let's say on Black Friday, and I see a 100-inch TV and you see the same thing, that's a high value TV to me, but to you it might not be.
That's correct. And if a lot of people or if a lot of people like me, and they're like, you know what, that's not that valuable, then if we outweigh you, then the person who's selling it is likely to drop the price if they're smart, or else it won't sell. Correct?
Sure, yeah, but price doesn't add value though.
I didn't say price adds value. I said I'm arguing it's an indication of value.
I
But
wouldn't
once
even
again, this
say
goes
it's
back
an
to my original
indication of
statement.
value.
If someone's trying to sell something and no one wants to buy it, then it would be wise of that person to lower their price if they want to sell that item. Correct? So
Mm-hmm.
if we go full circle, if a lot of men don't necessarily like this is the honest truth. A lot of men find it repulsive that, you know, the higher up a body count goes, the more repulsive it is. It's harder to stomach. One
Okay,
might
then
be
why do you
okay, well, if
believe
I
that
could
the
finish the point.
women?
So the woman might say, well, you guys are stupid, or you guys have little wieners, or you guys are not real men. You can kick and scream all you want, but if you don't lower your price that you're selling in order to get into a relationship with someone, then you're not going to get one. Because if no one sees value in that, then you have to lower it, or else, you can be alone. Not you in particular, but you kind of get the point.
Oh, yeah, no, I know, not me in particularly. Anyways, um,
Do you counter
so
that?
that's, yeah, I was about to. Um, so when it comes to men looking at women and finding it repulsive if they have a high body count, why do they keep sleeping with the women then as one night stands? And why is hookup culture such a thing, especially with Gen Z?
for
Because
fun.
because there's a mating strategy that's short term versus long term. So a man might have relations with someone, but he would never ever bring her home to his mother, or he would never tell her. He just wouldn't seek anything long term with her. But he might. But if he's looking for an actual relationship, something long term, he's going to be more specific about who he's selecting. Does that explain that to you?
Yeah.
So do you have any more objections?
Not really. I still don't agree with you, but I don't
Well,
really
you
have
have
any.
you have no counterpoints. You have no rebuttals. So,
No, not really.
all right. Well, would you at least say that I made a sound case or a reasonable one?
Maybe for other people, not for me.
Oh,
My
okay.
mind is made up on body count. For me personally, I really don't care which body count is. Whatever happens before me and after me, it doesn't really bother me as long as it doesn't happen during me.
Yeah, but here's
You're talking about how
the
you made
point is
select.
though.
Go ahead.
The point is though, when you say as in a general aspect that it doesn't matter, you're speaking for the public, and it matters to the people that it matters to. If that makes sense,
Yeah,
like
Rage, if you let me finish saying what I was saying. Um, but if we bring to a general aspect or whatever, I think it's perfectly okay if people have preferences or whatever. You prefer to not have. You prefer for somebody to have a lower body count, both men and women. Doesn't matter who you're dating. I think that's perfectly okay. But I think there's a difference between having that preference and shaming. We shouldn't be shaming people for having a high body count because everybody's is interacting with hookup culture, whether they like it or not, or they want to admit it or not. Everybody's enacting in hookup culture. Um, so we shouldn't be shaming others for having a high body count, but you can still have your preference.
Well,
so
can I
then
ask
you
you a
concede
question?
that it matters.
What, James?
Okay. The question kind of has an underpinning because the question, why does body count matter? It's a it's a matter of a value judgment. So as a society, we move towards things that we think are best for society, and oftentimes we do shame what we don't want. So for example, if a person has a car and he wants to interact on the road with other traffic and other vehicles, then he would be kind of a dick not to get car insurance, because if he doesn't have the ability to pay the damages he caused, then we would all agree that this person's not really being a good actor. So when it comes to body count, I would also make a value judgment. And this isn't just towards women, it goes across the board. I just think that women are taking the most, they're the ones kicking and screaming about this issue the most.
Are men not the one also enacting in hookup culture? Like, if so, here's the thing though: is like women are claiming or saying that they want to enact for the 4B movement. They don't want to sleep with men or get into
I think that's
relationships
great.
anymore. And people are like, men are like throwing a fit because of that. But in the same
What men?
sense, men are also
Yeah, what men are throwing a fit
Yeah,
about
what men
that?
are throwing a fit?
there's plenty of men that have thrown a fit over the 4B Act. Um,
From in a conceptual sense, not like actually like, damn, I can't sleep with these women. Like nobody wants to sleep with those women that even think that mindset anyway.
I think the 4B movement's very great.
um, but in that same sense, those same men are also calling those same women that, um, if they weren't enacting the 4B, they were just sleeping around, would call them 304s, right? I feel like we need to pick a struggle. Are we upset about people sleeping around or are we not? And how are we going to end hookup culture if we don't like high body count?
Why would we want to end hookup culture?
Well,
Well, if you
who
don't
thinks
want to
you
be in
shouldn't?
a relationship with if you want to be in a relationship with a woman and potentially get married with a woman, but she loses value because she has a high body count, why wouldn't you end hookup culture?
Well, it's up to the women if they want to, end
It's
hookup
not
culture or not.
just up to the women though.
It
It's
is
up to
though,
the
because
men too.
women like are the ones that are, saying yes, saying no, this and that.
Are men not saying yes or no to intercourse?
No, but men are naturally gonna like try to like sleep with women. It's just gonna be a thing like realistically, right? But at the end of the day, like who says yes is really up to the woman. Like
Both parties say yes though.
no, but it's more up to the woman than it is the man.
But both parties say yes. It is
But
also up. If you don't want to sleep with a woman, are you going to hit on her and try and get her to sleep with you?
probably
Look, this is a problem I have with the prompt. I think what's going on really is that there's a lot of females complaining about the fact that they're not able to sell on the market. So it's like saying you shouldn't want Wi-Fi on your phone. Why do you want that on your phone? A lot of women are complaining because they're not able to get what they think are good men. So they're just basically trying to shame men by just having preferences that we will pay a certain price for. So it's like if I want,
You
if
know
I
what
have,
it's the same as?
go
You
ahead.
know what's the same as? It's the same as if like I made a prompt. I went live and made a prompt that said income doesn't matter. Like, of course it doesn't matter to me, of course. Like, of course. But at the same time though, a bunch of women they're gonna care about it. Like, it's just what it is. It's the same shit. We're into different things. You can't say it doesn't matter when the other sex is telling you that it does.
Yeah, I would agree. But what goes on is you get shamed for it. So when men try and be vulnerable or express how they process it, they get shamed.
Yeah, and men get and yeah, men no, but the thing is men get shamed for being broke too though, right? So it's like
Right. So we can shame
it's
men, but we can't shame women.
it's a you know what I'm saying? That's what it comes down to. You can shame men, you can't shame women.